I'm going to start. Good morning. I'm Rosemary Menard. I'm from the Santa Cruz Water Department. I'm just going to talk sort of big picture, and I want to sort of tee off a couple of things Eric said about siting reservoirs and trying to think about what it takes to fill a reservoir and, you know, where the water's going to come from, et cetera. And I guess that from my perspective, having, you know, the surface water supply, main surface water supply in the area, there was a big effort in the 80s to build another surface water reservoir here that didn't happen. And I think that generally speaking, siting a reservoir, whether it's on-stream, an on-stream reservoir in particular, is probably not a very likely outcome in our area because of the threatened and endangered fish species that we're trying to manage for. I think another thing about the whole reservoir siting and, you know, whether it's cheaper to construct or not is, you know, it all depends a lot on what you're talking about, whether you're talking about a brand new reservoir, raising a dam, doing something in a quarry. There are many sort of physical, geologic kinds of issues that you have to find and balance. So not only do you have to have a way to get the water in the reservoir, if it's not an on-stream reservoir, which I don't think are viable in the sort of the state and the world that we live in at the moment, I think that then you have to find a way to transport the water. You really have to have something that's big if you want to solve the problem in a comprehensive way. And then fundamentally, you have to be able to have a reliable supply of water to put in there. So I'm not saying that none of that's possible. I'm just saying those are the things that you have to consider when you're thinking about where to site one. And in fact, whether it's cheaper or not depends a lot on what else the alternatives are.
Just to add a little bit to that, one of the suggestions has been particularly with using the old quarries as reservoirs. That's been looked at several times. Corolla engineers looked at that back in 2000, looking specifically at the Olympia quarry, if that would be a suitable site. The site did not really have a huge volume of water that could be stored, and it had a lot of technical issues as to whether or not it would work. Stability of berms, seepage, all those are the sorts of issues that you have to worry about. And then also, where does the water come from? If you're going to be pumping winter water, then there's water quality issues, sediment issues, a number of other things. Hansen Quarry has also been suggested. Hansen Quarry also has a fairly low volume if you put the water into that. It also has a very large landslide close to Bean Creek that if you put much water in Hansen Quarry, you'd most likely activate that slide and get a lot of sand going into the creek and into the river. So there's a number of technical issues that are pretty substantial with those, and a lot of cost and relatively low volume of production.
So I'm just going to add a couple of things about, some of you know that in 2014, 2015, the city did a thing called the Water Supply Advisory Committee process. There were a number of technical evaluations of various kinds of quarry alternatives. There was one in particular that got quite a bit of detailed evaluation. It was the Lydell Quarry over in the old Cemex site on the north coast. That quarry has quite steep sides, and the process of lining it, as well as the maintaining the integrity of the liner over the top of a karst formation, was going to be a really big challenge. But also, when you got it lined and you got it finished, whatever you spent on it, it only held 650 million gallons. And that sounds like a lot of water, but just to put that into context, the Loch Lomond, which is not a huge reservoir, has 2.8 billion gallons. And so from a scale in terms of some of what we need to get ourselves through the dry season here, a 650 million gallon reservoir is not going to make a huge difference.
Okay, we're going to move on to the next question. And this will be fielded by Perrette Harmon. Hello. There's too much growth for our available and future water supply. We will damage the basin if we keep growing, so it is time that we stop or constrain development.
So I was either volunteered or voluntold to take this topic because it seems to be that Scotts Valley is the mega metropole here in the county, and there's a lot of fear out there that if we keep growing the way we have been or we are planning to be, something bad is going to happen. So I would like the other slide. So I love the numbers, and from water management standpoint, it's all. Last time you heard about the water budget, so it's the available water and how it gets used, how much of it. So it's a checkbook. So I don't know if you can see those. Those slides are going to be available for you later. But the circle, the red circle there, is available water, and we all have pretty good sense in an average year how much water is this basin available, how much water is available in this basin, how much water gets recharged. So that's the red circle. So if you go back all the way to 70s, there is colored sectors in there, and there's white. And the white was how much extra water was there that wasn't used by all of the pumpers. Then you go to 1995, and the full circle is full of colors. And those colors represent different pumpers in the basin. And obviously you can see that the whole pie is bigger than the red dotted circle. So collectively, we pumped way more than this basin was able to recharge naturally. And then you come to 2015, you see there's a white slice there again. So that means that in any average year, the combined pumping is less than a sustainable yield of this basin. So this is just kind of put in the background. And then we talk about, so how much do we use? How much does any single person here use? What is used statewide these days is 50 gallons per person per day. Is it a lot? Is it not enough? It's, for any of you to decide. But we have seen per capita consumption dropping since, I would say, probably last 20 years it's been happening. And because people have started paying attention how they use it. For some of you, it might come very naturally. You know that when you're using less water, you're also using less energy. You have all heard that water industry is one of the biggest energy users in the state. That is true. But I don't know how many of you know that most of that energy is used at homes by water heaters. So if you're using less water at home, you're also using less energy. So that's a main driver that these days, efficient home uses about, per year, 45,000 gallons of water. So let's just do some simple math here. So the big water drop back there is our annual use, us being Scotts Valley Water District. It's about 1 million gallons a day, or about 370 million gallons a year these days. So 100 homes, and those are not very well seen. There's a little tiny water drop. That's how much 100 homes would add to the big water drop. About a little over 1%. And our average hotel these days, also about 1%. So all of the general plan discussion you heard 2 meetings ago now, none of the municipal jurisdictions in the county are planning to double or triple. We're all talking about a total growth that is maybe 10-15% of additional population. Just by simple numbers, you see that this is not quite adding up. We do have the white slice there, so the population growth in its own is not something that we need to be concerned about. We can manage it. What is really critical is to remember those dry years that Eric was talking about. Because dry year is 50%. It could be 70% less rainfall. It could be multiple years. So that is what eats up that white sector, and that's kind of the main thing we need to deal with, is how often, how severe, and how do you prepare for that?
What were those other colors?
So in the basin, we have 2 municipal pumpers. We have Scotts Valley Water District. We have San Lorenzo Valley Water District. Mount Herman is the largest private pumper. Then we have industrial remediation pumping. It's a very small sector. It's going away. And we have all of the private pumping other than Mount Herman.
So
This is only groundwater pumping, so Santa Cruz is not a groundwater user in the basin.
Okay. Again, I want to keep us on schedule. And again, these are perspectives, and you may agree or not agree, but we're trying to be responsive to the questions that got asked in prior sessions. So the next question is going to be going to both Perrette and John this time. We should be able to recharge our aquifers by capturing rainfall during wet years. We should capture stormwater since it's the most affordable and practical solution for our water supply. Oh, that's the next slide. Okay, sorry.
So a few more numbers here. When it rains, how much water actually hits the ground? So I did some simple math here. Scotts Valley, and I'm coming from, again, what I know the best. That's the area I manage, but it's very similar to anywhere. So area of 5 square miles, and that's about the size of the city of Scotts Valley. If it rains 4 inches, and most of our rainfalls are not that, but if we get a big storm that is 4 inches, 450 million gallons of water hits, 450 million gallons of water, 350 million gallons of water hits the ground. 350 million gallons of water is how much Scotts Valley Water District customers use in 1 year. That's a lot of water. So how big of a capture container would you need if you wanted to actually keep it all? It's a 1 football field that is 1,000 feet high. 4 inches of rain. You remember in February we had a few of those days. So obviously that's not going to be something we're going to be constructing in Scotts Valley. So we could do it in smaller scale, and we have done it in smaller scale. We have 3 low-impact development projects that have been implemented in Scotts Valley. The most recent one is under the Transit Center parking lot in Scotts Valley, and it was about $1.2 million project. Fortunately, we were able to use some grant fundings from Prop 84 for that, but it's not very big. So what it can hold is about 1.3 million gallons a year. And that's in an average rainfall year. Because of course, if we get dry years, there is not this much to put in there. And the cost, so if we use the cost of that and come up with a per acre foot cost of supply, those are the numbers that we kind of have to think about when we decide which project to do next. Our groundwater supply rough cost is about $1,000 an acre foot. Another project we're considering, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more later, is recycled water recharge project. And estimated cost of that, supply cost, would be about $3,000 an acre foot. For a stormwater capture, based on a project like we did at the Transit Center, $30,000 per acre foot. So that's probably something that my ratepayers are not going to be very happy doing many of that unless we get free money from someplace else.
So this is one that, you know, I'd have to say we were somewhat disappointed in how the numbers came out. We had hoped that stormwater recapture and recharge would be a sort of a no-brainer because we've lost recharge due to development, but it really is challenging. We also looked at, well, if we collect water from the Scotts Valley area and say pipe it to the Hansen Quarry and either store it or infiltrate it there, the cost there was also substantial because when you're dealing with stormwater and pumping stormwater, you have to have big pipes and big pumps because you have a lot of water in a very short period of time. So the project becomes expensive. The good news is that for any new development or any redevelopment projects, we will continue to be doing on-site stormwater and infiltration and capture of stormwater, partly as a, not just as a water supply project, but also as a stormwater management project to reduce the water quality impacts and the other impacts of stormwater. So going forward, new projects will have to capture and infiltrate their stormwater and keep their runoff rates at pre-development levels.
Okay. Andy, if I can have you write the question, and we'll come back. I just want to try to stay with the process we've always done of writing the questions. So was there anything else you had then, John, or move on to next?
Well, I was just going to say, we are also looking at projects throughout the county. We have mapped recharge areas that are particularly suitable for these sorts of projects. We're actually pursuing a couple of those in the mid-county area where we're already have the stormwater collected in one place and where the site conditions are particularly favorable to get infiltration. And down in the Pajaro Valley, they're working with farmers to create more substantial recharge areas down in that area where they have a very significant overdraft problem, and the farmers are actually receiving financial incentives to devote some of their land area to recharge of the groundwater basin there.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next question then, which will be fielded by Jen Michelson from SLV. The water in the San Lorenzo Valley belongs to the San Lorenzo Valley and should not be used by others. All water users in the Santa Margarita Basin should rely on water originating from their own jurisdiction, and we shouldn't be sharing or giving our water away to other agencies. So this is a little light comment for Jen Hamilton.
Lucky me. I got the short straw. Okay.
That's what you get when you're not at the meeting, Jen. You get the comment.
Okay, well, I wanted to first reiterate some of what Eric Ekdahl had said earlier, and that is that the state constitution states that all water belongs to all the people of the state and that it should be put to beneficial use while protecting public trust values, and that conservation of water should be exercised and water should not be wasted. So that's kind of the foundation, but then I wanted to bring it more local and talk more about the San Lorenzo Valley Water District specifically. Since so many of us are here from the San Lorenzo Valley, I think it'll be maybe hopefully interesting. Okay, so this, can you put the map? Yeah. Cool. All right, it's not really that clear up here, but okay. So the San Lorenzo Valley Water District has 7 small surface water streams that we have a water right to. Most of those are pre-1914 water rights in the north part. So you can see up there by Boulder Creek and Brooktail, there's several streams along Ben Lomond Mountain that are all pre-1914 water rights. We also have water diversions on Fall Creek and Bull Creek here in Felton, and those are adjudicated water rights that are not pre-1914 and are and that water right is directly connected to the total flow on the San Lorenzo River, and that is because the city of Santa Cruz has their water right on the San Lorenzo River. So it's really important. I think a lot of people don't understand or didn't know that the San Lorenzo Valley Water District doesn't have a water right to the San Lorenzo River itself. We have water rights to the streams that flow to the San Lorenzo River. And the city has the water right to the San Lorenzo River. And that is a more senior water right to our adjudicated water right on Fall Creek for the town of Felton. And it's not a secret that the Fall Creek water right is in violation occasionally usually during the end of the summer months when the stream flow and the total flow in the San Lorenzo River drops to a certain point. Our water right says we're not allowed to divert any water from the Felton water sources. And that's the only source of water for the town of Felton. And so in those months, usually around October, November, that water right goes into violation. And so, so we've been working on putting together documentation that we need in order to start a CEQA process in order to get the permits to use the intertie, the emergency intertie. The intertie was placed for the emergency only, and it looks like that would need to be used in order to get Felton into compliance on their water right. So I just wanted to kind of outline some of the challenges that San Lorenzo Valley Water District has and how we could move water around in order to address some of the challenges. So in the South System, I don't know if everybody knows this either, but the San Lorenzo Valley Water District serves a fairly significant population in the city of Scotts Valley. And we share the aquifer with the city of Scotts Valley Water District. So that is the same source of water down there in the south system. And we call that the south system. And is anyone here from that south system that is in Scotts Valley but served by San Lorenzo Valley Water District? Cool, couple. So that aquifer, as you all know, or as we're all aware, is in overdraft. And we also have some infrastructure challenges there that we're working on this year, trying to upgrade some of those water system infrastructure. And then I also wanted to mention that during the drought in 2015, when the whole state was really suffering and there was a lot of water shortage across the state, that was the same in our north system. And I think people in the north system, up in Boulder Creek, Ben Lomond, and now that north system serves Lompico as well, think that they have abundant water sources. And that's true sometimes. Like this year, during the wet part of the year, those north system sources that are the pre-1914 water rights up on the Ben Lomond Mountain, right now those are flowing with a lot of water. But in the winter, that's not when we need the most water. In the spring, that's not when people are watering their gardens. People are watering their gardens in the summer, late summer, and and those stream sources typically drop off. And they're not they're not adequate to serve the whole system, and so then we start using groundwater to make up the difference there. And so and also we had during the 2015 drought, the water supply, the surface water sources nearly completely dried out, and there was really, we were pumping more water than we had ever pumped that year. And we were also, this community saved 40% water consumption. They were saving 40%. And without that conservation, we would have really had a lot of big problems. We may have even run out of water and had to do some creative strategies for getting water to people every day. So we were very strained in the north system during the drought. So those are some of the challenges, and I wanted to also mention that the challenges were because of water supply shortage and also infrastructure, failing infrastructure and inadequate infrastructure. So those are our two main challenges, our water supply and infrastructure. All right, and so there are some solutions that are coming out. We just finished a hydrologic assessment that looks at all of our infrastructure and our pipelines and what's feasible about moving water around. And so really, it's really important to consider how we can bank some of this winter flows during the summer months, so that we can use them during the dry periods and during drought. And so the hydrologic analysis showed that we could reduce, if we were to use our water right on Loch Lomond, we could reduce pumping in the south system up to 60%. And there could be excess water that could be used to do in-lieu recharge. And in-lieu recharge means that you would, instead of pumping during the winter months when we have excess stream flow that's not needed for fish, more water than what the fish, so we'd be looking at what the fish need and what the people in our community need, and then whatever's left over, and there can be considerable water left over, then we could use that in the south system or in Scotts Valley as in lieu. So they would stop pumping, we would stop pumping on our wells in that south system and start to recover the aquifer. So that would be one strategy. And I wanted to say that integrated regional water management partnerships can help both the San Lorenzo Valley Water District and neighboring communities by storing water during wet years in the ground so that we can use them for dry periods and droughts. And by partnering with the other neighboring water agencies, we have an economy of scale. And so we'd be sharing financial resources to realize some of the projects that can optimize water management. and ensure reliable water resources for future generations. That's all.
Yeah, give Jen a hand. That's right. Jen, in fairness, Jen probably got the toughest question. Okay, we're running a little tight on time, so I just want to be aware. So you guys are all turning in a ton of cards. Thank you very much. I'm going through them right now. There's a number of questions that are being brought in that very likely might get answered in the last session before, and then we have a whole half-hour Q&A session thereafter. So again, hopefully it's self-evident from the past workshops. I'm not ignoring. I'm just trying to sort them out, and I want to make sure we can get to them, and we will. Okay, the next question is going to be handled by Rosemary particularly, or maybe Jen as well. Okay, the Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency is going to make water rights policies, and that doesn't seem fair. Rosemary?
Not unless we don't do the job ourselves, right? That's what Eric said earlier, that really we have a lot of ability in developing a plan to look at how we want the water to be managed in our basin and to work together to come up with a solution that works for everyone. And it's really, the state would only step in the event that we don't develop a plan, or if once we've developed it, we don't implement it. So really, this is not so much about water rights, the planning process. It's about finding a local way to manage these resources to meet, comply with our values and to meet our regional, local needs here.
Okay, and the last question we've got teed up will be for John. Santa Margarita Groundwater Agency should meter private wells and control the water use because private well owners get water for free and use too much of it. Okay, John got maybe the second toughest one.
Oh, that's not so hard. How many private well users do we have in the room? I'm on a private well. Any small water systems out there? Okay, good. What about anybody that uses a well for, say, commercial, agricultural, industrial use? Okay, those are what we call non-de minimis users. Most of us are de minimis users. We use our water for domestic use, less than 2 acre-feet per year. SGMA essentially gives us, the agency only has the authority under SGMA to put meters on non-de minimis users. Those people that are not using water for non-domestic purposes are using more than 2 acre-feet per year. So right up front, there's not the authority to put meters on everybody's wells. We may be looking at that for the non-de minimis users though, because it's good to try to have a handle on what's being used out there. But the other part of that is we as private well owners, we have some pretty substantial costs. Our water is not free. We have to drill a well, we have to maintain that well, we have to pull the well periodically, we have to pay the electricity to pump the water out. So the water is not free. There's really no incentive to waste water, to use more water than you need. So we all typically have float valves and things like that keep our pump from over pumping. If people were wasting water, that's something that we would probably be aware of. Their neighbors would call and complain about water running down the road or that sort of thing. So we just don't really see that kind of water waste that's alluded to. I think generally folks that are on private wells are pretty conscious, pretty conservative. They're wanting to maintain their property and maintain their wells. So they also are taking care of the basin.
Okay, let's give a hand to our folks that were here.